So in this video, we'll go over how to finally overcome your tennis elbow. But before we jump into that, here's how to not overcome it. Flex bar, cortisone shots, cupping, bracing, massage, resting, stretching, PRP, peptides. All these things do is they just help to mask the symptoms, to decrease the pain in the moment, but they don't address the underlying issue, the underlying root cause of tennis elbow, and that's why it keeps on coming back. So in this video, we'll do two things. We'll go over the 5 stages of overcoming tennis elbow, and we'll go over the full system that we've used to help over 250 people overcome their tennis elbow and get back to the sport that they love pain-free and just their everyday life pain-free. And most of them have already tried everything that I just mentioned. They felt like they were doing the right things, but the pain kept on coming back and they were stuck. And there's a particular reason for this that we'll go over in this video to help you finally overcome it. And if you're serious about finally overcoming this, you're sick and tired of that pain always coming back, just grab a paper and a pen. We'll be going over a lot of important information throughout this video, so just take some notes. All right, so let's dive into it. Right now, you're on one of 2 different paths. Number 1 is the frustrated, stuck path where you're icing, resting, stretching, hoping that the pain goes away. But overall, you're feeling frustrated with your journey and it's not getting better. And path number 2 is the intentional recovery path where you understand exactly what's going on. You understand what tennis elbow is. You understand your root cause. You have a plan built around it to finally overcome it. And in this video, I'll help you go from path number 1 to path number 2. But first, we need to understand the 5 stages that people go through when they're dealing with tennis elbow. And the first stage I like to call hoping. This stage, we start to develop the pain. It's not as serious, and we're just hoping that it goes away. It's almost like if you're out in public and there's a creepy person around bothering people, you kind of just avoid it. You don't think about it, hoping that it goes away. But unfortunately, the tennis elbow, a lot of times it sticks around and it stays. That's stage 1. And if the pain sticks around, we usually go into stage 2, which is called managing. So the pain didn't go away. It's still sticking around. It's starting to bother our sport, our everyday life. It's starting to get in the way of things, but it's not a huge problem yet. We're starting to do a little bit of research. We're starting to address it. Maybe do a little bit of icing, stretching, maybe a little bit of a Google deep dive, YouTube videos. This is where we start to understand that it's not just going to go away on its own, and we're starting to incorporate some small things to finally address it. And next is stage 3, and this is where most people find themselves in, and it's called the frustrated stage. And if you're dealing with tennis elbow, you know exactly what I mean. It can be a really frustrating injury to deal with, and that frustration happens for a reason. Number 1, we don't understand exactly what's going on. When we try to get help, we don't get a clear plan to finally solve it. And when we try to do things that we think are good for it, like resting, icing, stretching, all the things that I mentioned before, it doesn't work. The pain just keeps on coming back and it sticks around. And that's what makes this injury so frustrating. And this is where a lot of people feel stuck. They don't feel like they're getting the help that they need. And because of this, it starts to affect even our mindset. And it starts to feel like it's never going to go away. And from stage 3 to 4 is the most important transition because we go from the frustrated stage to the rebuilding stage. This is where you understand exactly what tennis elbow is. You understand your root cause, you're following a specific plan, you're on the right path to finally overcoming it. When we stick long enough in the rebuilding phase, that's eventually when we break through into what I call the freedom stage. And I call this freedom because tennis elbow has a way of restricting our life, feeling like we're stuck, frustrated, not able to do what we need to do. And the best way to describe how it feels once you overcome tennis elbow is freedom. You have the freedom to be able to do whatever you want, live the life that you want without that arm holding you back. It's very liberating, and it's worth all the effort that you put into it in the short term to overcome that elbow pain, to feel that freedom long term. And this is why I love what I do, is helping people transition to that stage and finally get to the freedom that they're looking for, because this injury can be so frustrating, so hard to deal with. There's so much information at the same time, and there's little information at the same time. And the reason I call it overcoming tennis elbow and not fixing tennis elbow is fixing tennis elbow puts the wrong image in our mind. It makes it feel like we need a mechanic to go in there to fix it and get some surgery, or we're looking for something outside to bring in to fix it, like cortisone shots, PRP, peptides. But the truth is, your body can heal from within. And instead of fixing, I like to call it overcoming, because at the end of the day, we just want to get back to the activities that we did previously. And that's why I like the word overcoming better than fixing. And stay with me, because later in this video, we'll go over a tennis elbow assessment that you can't find anywhere else. You can't do it at your PT, your doctors. I know this because I developed it myself, because everybody treats tennis elbow the same when it's not all the same. We see all different types of tennis elbow. So you need to find your tennis elbow to finally overcome it. You need to know what is injured before we address it. And this is the same assessment that we use with all of our clients to find their root cause and help them overcome their elbow pain. But before we jump into that, first I want to go over how to get from stage 3 to 4, and to finally overcome and break through, we need 3 different things. And I like to think of it as a triangle here. So we have the 3 most important things. If all are true, then our chances of overcoming this injury are much higher. And the first side of this triangle is what I call the what. And what I mean by this is not just what tennis elbow is, but what we need to focus on to finally overcome it. And really, we've been lied to. We've been told that tennis elbow is inflammation, that if we rest it, ice it, get a cortisone shot, all these things, and the pain will just go away. But probably what you noticed is that it doesn't. It keeps on coming back, and there's a reason for this. Because tennis elbow is not actually inflammation, it's degeneration. So imagine that tendon on the outside of that elbow as a rope. And if we keep on tugging on it, if we overuse it, over time it starts to weaken. And that weakness, that degeneration, is what causes the pain. And yes, there might be some inflammation involved, but inflammation is just a symptom. It's not the root cause of tennis elbow. And that's why it keeps on coming back, because we're focusing on the wrong things. So a lot of times people get stuck in a vicious cycle, what I call the pain rest cycle. We get pain, the pain increases, we rest it, ice it, stretch it, we get a little bit of relief, we go back to playing, we use that elbow, and the pain just comes back. And then we're stuck in this cycle because, again, we're treating the symptoms, not the root cause. So imagine your tennis elbow as a house that's on fire. The fire represents the inflammation, and the damage to the house is the degeneration. So what do? You call the fire department, the icing, resting, stretching, all the things that help with the inflammation. Now the inflammation is gone, the fire is gone, but you're left with a broken house. And what a lot of people do is, instead of getting a construction crew to get back to repair the house, what they do is they just call the fire department over and over and over again, but there's really not much they can do because the fire is gone. There's no more inflammation. Inflammation is not the root cause. It's the degeneration that we need to fix to finally overcome it. So if tennis elbow is degeneration of that tendon on the outside of the elbow, then what actually fixes tennis elbow? So tendons heal through a process called mechanotransduction, which is a fancy term that means that exercises and loading that tendon signals to the brain, to the body, to start the healing process. So yes, tendons can heal if given the right stimulus. Now here's the key. If we just rest, that process doesn't happen. So that's why resting doesn't fix tennis elbow. We actually need to do something about it. And that's why an active approach is much better than a passive approach. So as we load that tendon through exercises, the body feels that load throughout that tendon. And that's what signals the healing process to start. And over time, that elbow gets stronger and stronger. The tendon becomes more resilient. And that's how we fix this long term. A great analogy for overcoming tennis elbow that I like to use in this case is, imagine you're stuck in a rowboat in the middle of the ocean. So that's you stuck with the tennis elbow. We have the problem. So how do we solve it? Figuring out the what tennis elbow is, and how to overcome it is like figuring out the right tool to use. We wouldn't really get far using a flip-flop to paddle, but once you understand what tennis elbow is and how to overcome it, that's like using regular paddles to paddle, and that becomes much more efficient, because it doesn't matter how hard you try. If you're doing the wrong things, you won't get anywhere. The second most important thing to know, and the second side of the triangle, is what I call which. What I mean by which part of the elbow is actually injured, what is your root cause, and what do we need to focus on to finally overcome it? And why that is important is because there's so many different exercises that you could be doing, and not all tennis elbows is the same. So what we need to do is find exactly why you're having pain, where, and build that plan around it to finally get it fixed and to target that root cause. So we're not just looking for tennis elbow exercises, we're looking for the best exercises for you to finally overcome it. And going back to that analogy, understanding which part of your elbow is injured and what exercises you need to focus on is like having a compass on that rowboat. So now you know exactly which direction to go. And the final side of the triangle, what puts it all together, is the how. And what I mean by this is we could know exactly what tennis elbow is. We could know exactly how to overcome it. We could know exactly what exercises to do. But if we don't do them, if we don't stay consistent, if we don't know how to stay consistent, push through and deal with the flare-ups, deal with the setbacks, then we won't get there. And how I like to think about it, going back to that analogy, is imagine this is your navigator, your guide on the rowboat, motivating you to stay going, stay on course, deal with the adversities, and finally get to your end destination, which is overcoming the elbow pain. And this is the part that's easier said than done, because when you're actually dealing with tennis elbow, you could feel like you're having some initial progress, and then it flares up, feels like you lost all that progress. So what's really important in the how is actually keeping your mindset in the right spot, dealing with those adversities, and understanding that it's a long-term play, it's a long-term game, and that recovery usually takes longer than we expect it and takes a lot more work than we expect it to. But again, overcoming it and getting to the other side is so rewarding and freeing. It makes up for all the things that we have to go through. And this is where it's important to have somebody on your team, somebody in your corner supporting you, letting you know what is okay, what is not okay, and guiding you all the way to the point where you finally overcome your tennis elbow. Hey, and real quick, if you're already seen enough and you want more personalized help on finally overcoming tennis elbow, check the description down below for the next steps. Let's get back into it. So at this point of the video, you should already have a pretty good understanding of what tennis elbow is and what you need to focus on in order to finally address it. So that gives us the right tools to finally address it. And the secret really is focusing on exercises and strengthening that elbow to finally overcome it. So we got that covered. Next is the which. And this is something that frustrated me a lot about traditional PT and approaches that target elbow pain. They all treat it the same. You go to your PT, they print you out a sheet of exercises that they do with everybody else. There's thousands of videos on YouTube that show you the 5 best exercises for tennis elbow. But again, nothing is personalized to you. So what we identified is 6 different areas where that pain could be coming from. And based on this, we developed an assessment that tests each of those spots individually so we can finally find where your pain is coming from, and more importantly, what to focus on next to finally overcome it. So here's the 6 spots that we found with tennis elbow. It's the extensor carpi radialis longus, the extensor carpi radialis brevis. That pain could be coming from the extensor carpi ulnaris, the supinator, finger extensors, or sometimes it could be even coming from the radial nerve. So as you can see, there's a lot of different areas where that pain could be coming from, and really most traditional PT and approaches, they just focus on the extensor carpi radialis brevis, sometimes maybe the supinator, but you can see that if your pain is coming from the different spots, you could be doing traditional PT and not really seeing success because it's not focusing on the right spots. So next we'll jump into that assessment. This assessment you can do holding a tennis racket, a golf club, anything that you can hold on to, and with the other hand push to provide resistance so we can test all those different spots and find where your pain is coming from. And as we go through this assessment, for each one of these spots, rank yourself from 0 to 10 pain, and then the 3 most painful spots will be the ones that you want to focus on the most with your recovery. All right, so here's that test. I'm going to hold my tennis racket, and the first test is nice and simple. We're going to hold that arm out all the way straight, holding that racket at the bottom here, holding with a nice strong grip. And the overall idea is with this arm, we're resisting, and with this arm, we're pushing. So at each point, there should be resistance. We should be pushing back, not just allowing that racket to move forward without any resistance. So straight arm, pushing out in front of you, nice and strong. I'm pushing about 80% here and looking for any pain, discomfort in the elbow. We would rank that from 0 to 10. And this test tests the extensor carpi radialis longus. This one crosses the elbow up above the elbow, and it goes to the wrist right here. So it helps with radial deviation and bending the elbow. So that's test number 1. Next, we'll go into the extensor carpi ulnaris. Instead of pushing away from you, this muscle actually helps with the opposite direction, so we'll pull that racket towards you. Same idea with this arm, we're resisting and looking for any pain, discomfort. This one doesn't hurt as often, but it can hurt for some people, especially golfers. Next, we'll go into the supinator, and the supinator comes from the outside here, wraps around, and it helps to turn the arm. For this one, we'll do the racket straight in front of us. The arm crosses over to the opposite side, and we're pushing nice and strong in the opposite direction here, testing that supinator there. Next up, we'll test the extensor carpi radialis brevis. For this one, have the arm out straight like this. I like to call this the motorcycle test. So with this arm, I'm pulling that wrist up, holding it nice and strong. And then with this arm, I'm grabbing the end of that racket and twisting the opposite direction. Very similar to what you would do with a flex bar, where you pull one arm and then push the other direction. For this one. All right, one more test before we go into the nerve. For this one, we won't need the racket. Just your arm out straight like this, like you're giving a high five. So elbow straight, wrist extended, fingers open, and I'm pulling the fingers back towards me. And then with the opposite hand, I'm pushing each finger away from me. And most people will get the most pain on the third, the middle finger there, but it can vary from person to person. If you have pain with this one, then a lot of times you'll also have pain with gripping things, gripping and pulling, squeezing, pushing down on a lotion bottle. Small things like that can really aggravate it if you have pain in this one here. And then the last test is actually not for a tendon or a muscle, it's for a nerve. And that's the radial nerve that comes all the way from the neck, travels the back of the shoulder here, and actually wraps around, and it goes through that supinator muscle. So a lot of people, when they test that supinator, they could have some shooting pain down. Because that radial nerve goes through that supinator, oftentimes it can get a little stuck there. And that's what we would call radial tunnel syndrome, which would cause that sharp shooting pain down the arm. The supinator doesn't cross that far, it only stays here. So if it's only the supinator, that pain should be here. If it's the nerve, it would shoot down. So how we test for that nerve is we cross the thumb in our hand, make a fist, then have that arm nice and relaxed next to your side. Then I'm curling the wrist back. So from the side, what that looks like is I curl that wrist back as far as I can. I turn the shoulder in so that the fingers are pointing away from me. Opposite hand pushes down on top of that shoulder, nice and strong. And then straight arm goes out to the side, nice and slow. The goal is to get to about shoulder height here. But if you have pain that limits you, you can stop there. What we're looking for is any pain in the elbow or shooting down. So this is the assessment that we developed after helping hundreds of people overcome elbow pain. This helps us become much more targeted and accurate with our recovery because we're addressing the actual root cause instead of just following a generic plan. So we're all done with the assessment. At this point, going back to the triangle, we're at the second part. We're finishing up that second part, which is understanding which area is injured and what exercises to focus on next. So I can help with that too. If you're looking for free help and you want some recommendations on my favorite exercises for each one of these spots, check the description down below for a free guide based on where you had the pain. You can mix that in with my favorite exercise for that region. Now, quick disclaimer there is this will get you on the right path. Potentially it might help you fix it all the way, but in most cases, it just gets us on the right path, right journey, because what works in the beginning oftentimes won't get us all the way to the end goal. And that's why we need to update that plan along the way as we're progressing, as we're going through the different phases of recovery. And that's exactly what we did with Angie. She was a paddle player. She started to develop some elbow pain that was holding her back from playing the sport that she loved. We found through the assessment that she had pain in the extensor carpi radialis longus, the supinator, finger extensors, And we also assessed her shoulder. We found that she had a lack of mobility and stability that was contributing to the elbow injury. So we addressed that all in the first phase. As she was getting better, we updated that plan along the way as she was progressing until she was able to finally get back to playing pain-free. And the how is really the most important part, but also the hardest part to figure out because it depends on person to person. If you do a different sport, depends on your lifestyle. All of that, we need to make sure that it fits into your recovery plan and we finally overcome the elbow pain. And there's a lot of helpful frameworks and tips that I'll share for this, but keep in mind that everybody's journey will look a little bit different. So I like to think about the different phases of overcoming tennis elbow as if we're trying to climb Mount Everest. And we wouldn't go all the way to the top. We would get altitude sickness. And how they do it there is they have different base camps at different altitudes. So base camp 1 or phase 1, I like to call reduce. This is where we're focusing on stabilizing the elbow pain, building that foundation so that we can build upon it later on. So we can incorporate isometrics here. Usually we might be playing here tennis, golf. We might be doing a little bit of the sports, but overall we're holding back to allow that pain to decrease. And again, to build that foundation that we can strongly build into the future. So this is base camp number 1, I like to call reduce. So that's our focus initially. From there, we want to rebuild. So as the pain is stabilized, as we're feeling more confident in the elbow, we slowly want to increase the weights, get that elbow stronger, and over time that challenges that tendon, and week by week, day by day, slowly gets a little bit stronger. So that's phase number 2 that I like to call rebuild. During this phase, we start to use that elbow more. We start to gain more confidence in the elbow. We feel like we're on the right track. Flare-ups can still happen. It can still be frustrating. And sometimes it can feel like that progress is really slow. But as long as we're doing the right things, staying consistent, we're making that breakthrough. Underneath the surface, down in the elbow, slowly it's getting stronger and stronger. And sometimes we don't see the results until later on. So that's rebuilding stage. Stage 3 is the return phase. This is where we start getting back to our regular life. We start using that elbow more. It doesn't feel like it's hindering us as much, so we can get back to playing. Maybe we're not playing as intensely or as much as we used to, but slowly we're getting back to our normal life, basically, and everyday activities, lifting weights, golf, tennis, all these things is what we focus on in this phase and slowly build back to where we used to be. And then the last phase, once we finally overcome that elbow pain, once we finally get to that peak, I like to call reinforce. Even though the pain is gone, it's basically non-existent, it's strong, it's stable, there's not many flare-ups, we still want to continue rehab to reinforce the results that we just built to make sure that the elbow stays strong now, but also into the future. So that's why I call it reinforce. Hopefully that gives you a nice visual of what that path, what those phases look like. Next, I like to share some helpful tips and guidelines so that you hit the sweet spot in terms of pain, intensity, and all the important things for the recovery. So throughout this whole journey, we want to keep the pain under control. A little bit of pain is completely normal and part of the process, and we should expect some soreness, achiness, dull pain as the elbow is responding, as we're challenging it, but we want it to be in a safe zone. And that safe zone is anywhere from 0 to 3 out of 10 pain. Anything more than that pushes the elbow a little too much, and in most cases is counterproductive to the recovery. So this applies to when you're doing the rehab, when you're exercising, when you're playing sports. We would want to keep that pain to a 3 out of 10 or less. And an important thing with tennis elbow is that sometimes it doesn't hurt in the moment. We have that delayed pain response. And that's a classic sign of tennis elbow and typical for tendon injuries that it doesn't always hurt in the moment. We can have a delayed response 24 to even 48 hours after an activity. So that's why it's important to track the pain during, but also after. So if you go play tennis and the pain is a 2 out of 10, but the next morning you wake up and it's a 5 out of 10, then that still counts as overdoing it. And in that case, what we do is we pull back by about 50%. We let things stabilize, and then we get back on track in terms of the recovery. So that was the pain rule. It's a very helpful guide and the most important thing to stick to while you're recovering. Now, something very important and equally as important, is hitting the right intensity with your exercises. If we do them too light, it won't be enough to challenge the elbow to start the recovery process. And if we go too hard too soon, oftentimes it'll be aggravated, potentially might cause a flare up. So that sweet spot to get the best results is about a 7 out of 10 intensity, which means somewhat hard. So towards the end of the set, the exercise, it's starting to fatigue. We feel that burn, we feel the challenge. We're approaching failure, but we're stopping just shy of failure. So maybe we could have done 2, 3 more repetitions, but not more than that. So again, we're approaching failure, but not going all the way to failure. Enough to challenge the body, but not so much to overwhelm it. So that's the sweet spot that gives us the best results. But keep in mind, if the pain is above a 3 out of 10 and you're not getting to that intensity because the pain is limiting you, then listening to the pain rule is more important. So I would go at a lower intensity, keep the pain down, and as you get more resilient, as you get stronger, then we can push the intensity if the pain allows for it. Now, transitioning to the last and most important point of the how part of recovery is consistency. And what makes that really hard for tennis elbow is it usually takes longer than expected and takes a lot more work than you anticipate to fully overcome this injury. And that really builds up the frustration, the impatience in terms of seeing results and overcoming this injury. And a lot of times, if people start feeling a little bit better or a little bit worse, they can either get discouraged, the consistency falls apart, and they never actually get it fixed because they don't stick long enough throughout the recovery process to fully overcome it. So a lot of times we hope that the recovery will just be a straight line down, that we start with a lot of pain, and as we're doing the exercises slowly, that pain decreases, we feel better until it goes away. But that's actually not what we see. And it would be nice if this was the case, but in most cases, what we see is actually a pattern like this, where maybe in the beginning that pain goes up, maybe it goes down. On a week-to-week basis, it really fluctuates. But if we zoom out, you can see that over time it is improving, it's becoming stronger, those flare-ups are less consistent. But if we are short-minded and only see it day by day or week by week, you can see that sometimes it doesn't really feel like we're making progress because it could flare up and hurt more than when we started, or that pain could drop down, feel like we're on the right path, feel like, oh, we're almost there, but then the pain returns. And that can be a really frustrating roller coaster of emotions when you're trying to overcome this elbow pain. But the most important thing is to keep a strong mindset, stay consistent, push through. And what helps with that is having the right plan and a plan that you trust in. Otherwise, things tend to fall apart if we start doubting if we're on the right plan. So that ties it all together. And now we fully completed the triangle, all 3 sides, to finally overcome tennis elbow. Everything you need to know to put you on the right path of recovery to finally overcome it. We went over what tennis elbow is and what you need to focus on. We went over which areas are injured and what exercises that would be best for you. And more importantly, how to stick to it, how to stay consistent, and how to deal with the setbacks throughout your recovery journey so you can finally get to the end goal of overcoming the tennis elbow. So at this point, you can take everything that you learned from this video, try to apply it to yourself, and try to fix it on your own. Or if you're looking for some help, some personalized help and guidance, somebody to be in your corner throughout this whole journey, take a look at the description down below. Click the link and it'll describe exactly how we can help you finally overcome this nasty tennis elbow.